Hello and welcome to the Washington Urban Debate League's Junior Varsity Video Series. Today, we'll be discussing cross-examination. We'll first review why cross-examination is important, go through some tips for asking and then answering questions, and then finish with some questions you should make sure you always ask. Policy debate is often called CX debate or cross-examination debate by old school people for a reason. It has the most extensive and most important question and answer periods of any debate format. These periods can prove crucial to determining the outcome of a debate. Cross-examination is a key place to change the judge's mind given a direct interaction between the two teams. Questioning period isn't a time to check out for any debater during the round, even if they aren't directly asking or responding to questions. For example, if we're in the cross-examination of the first affirmative constructive, the 1A is answering questions and the 2N is asking the questions. The 2A is backflowing the 1AC and looking for research as needed to support their partner, while the 1N is using those 3 minutes of prep time to get their speech ready. There are many reasons why cross-examination can win you the debate. I'm going to touch on the 5 most important. The first is this is free speech time. You get time to explain in your own words what you are talking about. Go into the details and nuances on your own terms. This lets you demonstrate your expertise on the subject of your case, which is something the judges are definitely looking for, and can also let you show a mastery of the other team's positions, putting you in a dominant position to win the debate. The second reason is to make an impression. Judges are humans with the same emotional responses as other people. You should always look for extra ways to make a positive impression on this individual. The things that give you the most speaker points, such as poise, confidence, subject mastery, good sportsmanship, and humor, are all easiest to demonstrate in cross-examination when a head-to-head comparison with the other team is possible. Even if cross-examination doesn't help you win the debate, it might help your record to get that trophy because of the speaker points you earned. Number 3 is to score some points. Who doesn't want another opportunity to attack the other team? This is a debate, a competition between opposing parties. So if you're offered an extra chance to score some points or set up future speeches, take it. Number 4 is free prep time. This is one of the most valuable commodities in a debate, behind only speech time in value. You want your partner to give the best speech they can to support your team, right? Give them the gift of free prep time by filling the entire questioning period. If you can do so with useful questions that help you win the debate, all the better, but at least use all the time for your partner's sake. And number 5, cross-examination can prevent stupid mistakes that'll cost you a victory. You can't write down every little detail of your opponent's case when they're speaking, especially at higher levels when other teams start speaking more quickly and having more complex arguments. Asking for clarification can prevent you from answering arguments they didn't make or mishandling arguments because you thought they were different than they actually are. It can also help you make sure you understand each point that the other team is talking about. If you don't understand what they're saying, you can't respond effectively. Let's talk about asking questions. First, prepare questions ahead of time. This can be done before the debate. You can set up arguments you know you want to use, or you can attack evidence you know the other team is likely going to read. If you're a novice or JV, you more or less know what the other team is going to say before they begin. You have the same packet of evidence they do, after all. Preparing questions should also happen during an opponent's speech. When something doesn't make sense or seems a little sketchy, circle it on your flow to ask about it later. Being prepared allows you to jump straight into cross-examination. This projects confidence and competence, while stalling projects anxiety and nervousness. Second, ask short, concise questions. looking for short answers. The more you preface a question, the more time the judge's mind has to wander away and not pay attention. Similarly, the longer the question, the more the other team feels comfortable giving you a long and winding answer. Direct and to-the-point questions are powerful, project command of the subject matter and confidence in your question. And third, ask questions with purpose. Try to ask questions for a reason, to set up an argument, to poke holes in another person's argument, or to clarify a point, etc. If you ask 2 or 3 questions on a specific area, move to a different line of questioning. Pressing a specific point for too long doesn't get you anywhere, and a diversity of questions looks like there are lots of problems with the other team. Keep control of your cross-examination period. If follow-ups aren't working, don't waste time and move on. If the other team keeps trying to talk over you, make eye contact with the judge and try these phrases. I have another question. Thank you. I have what I need. Let's move on. If they keep going, just ask your next question. If they keep going, you've established the other team as being rude and shifty with the judge. Even if you don't get to ask your question, you've still made your point. Integrate something you've learned from cross-examination into your next speech. This is critical. If you don't reference cross-examination later in your speeches, there wasn't much of a point to having asked in the first place. Don't forget to integrate all of your speaking opportunities together to make a coherent point and extend it throughout the debate. Let's talk a little bit about answering questions. First, give clean, concise answers when possible. This makes it look like you're in control and know what you're talking about, projecting calm confidence. Second, don't filibuster unless you absolutely have to. Long, rambling answers don't make you look very good. So make sure the consequences of answering the other team's questions are worse than the negative impression you're making with the judge. Third, refer to things that you've already said, quoting evidence to support your arguments. You read evidence for a reason. Make sure to use it. Fourth, don't let your arguments be mischaracterized. Clarify first and make it clear the other team is trying to twist your words out of context. Fifth, make eye contact with the judge. Check out their nonverbal cues. Most judges are highly responsive, even if they don't know it. Learn what arguments they're buying and what you need to explain more or to get away from. And lastly, be polite. Angry responses come off poorly. Let the other team look desperate and angry. You want to ask more details about a specific point of the other team's case, but you don't always want to look like you're clueless yourself. Here are some ways to frame your clarification questions. First, repeat part of their case and ask for confirmation. Here are some examples. Your case supports a national sex education program that goes beyond abstinence only, right? The research you quote is just referring to New York, right? Second, you can focus on a specific detail. Which programs are you increasing funding for again? Or, what was the date of your Smith evidence on solvency? Lastly, you can ask about a specific piece of evidence. Doesn't your Jones evidence actually say that the economy is cyclical? Sometimes you want to ask the other team to explain a complex idea or term in their own words so you can understand it too. Even if you don't know the answer, this is a good way to get them to clarify while making it look like you are on the offense, trying to put them on the spot. Here are some examples. How would you define capitalism? Or, what does federalism mean in the context of your argument? When responding to questions you aren't sure about, here are some ways out. Could you ask your question in another way? Could you repeat that? Could you provide an example of what you're talking about? Let's take a moment to talk about a few things you should never do during cross-examination. Don't insult or attack the other team personally. Stay focused on what they said in their arguments. Here's an example. What is the date of your evidence? Newer than yours for sure. Yours is so old it belongs in a nursing home. That type of snark is just unnecessary. Second, don't make statements or read new evidence. That's what we have speeches for. Third, don't ask questions about your own case. For example, didn't we show that? Or didn't our first contention state that? Just answer the question directly. You don't need to frame it in the form of a question. Lastly, don't engage if the other team asks you a question back. Why should we fund education? Well, funding education is a waste of money. Why should we waste our money? Will not get you an answer you actually want. Here are some things you should do. Always remember, you're trying to create an impression with the judge, so be polite. Second, refer to your evidence. Third, when answering questions, feel free to reject the premise of the other team's question and deny them the yes-no answer they might be looking for. And be sure to qualify your answers. Here's some examples. In the context of our affirmative, sure. When you include X and Y factors, yes. In most instances, no. Let's talk about the questions you should always have in your mind during a debate. Can we have a copy of, well, in every debate, there are some specific texts that are of critical importance. Plan texts, counterplan texts, topicality interpretations or counterinterpretations, critique alternatives, and do both arguments. Getting specific texts of these arguments lets you phrase the best response and write killer counterplan texts or counterinterpretations. Second, it allows you to hold them accountable. If you know what they originally said, you can call them out for trying to evolve their arguments later in the debate away from your offense. Third, it lets you use theory arguments. If the other team is trying to cheat, such as kicking an unconditional counterplan or adding or subtracting arguments from do both permutations, this is called intrinsicness and severance, you'll need the original text to call them out on it. And lastly, it stops you from missing anything important. It also ensures that you get all of their arguments down on the flow. Second, what is the status of your... Well, it's hard to debate a counterplan or a critique than a disadvantage or a topicality argument. This is because they create an alternative to the status quo, not doing anything, for the negative, which is exponentially harder for the affirmative to respond to. Conditionality is a piece of theory debate that asks the question, under what conditions will you go for these new worlds that you've created in the second negative rebuttal? Unconditionality means that your counterplan or critique will be in the 2NR, even if you're getting slaughtered on it. Conditionality means that you can get rid of it at any time. This should make a difference in how you approach the argument. More offense and less time invested in answering it, since the negative can just get rid of it whenever they want if it's conditional. Unconditional arguments you can spend all the time in the world on, since you know it's going to be there at the end of the debate. Theory arguments about how conditionality is bad are also fair game. Third, please explain your topicality violation in your own words. In your own words, what's wrong with our case? Especially for folks who aren't comfortable debating topicality, this is a good exercise to see if they know what they're doing. Ask the affirmative for a case that meets their definition. Is your definition good for debate in general? Can other cases actually meet this definition? Not understanding the nuances of a T argument can quickly result in an unresponsive second affirmative constructive and a big loss you could have avoided with a few simple questions. Number 4, how does the affirmative solve? Make the other team connect the dots from their links to their impacts in their own words. You might find a whole, questionable assumption or logical stretch here that you can exploit. Make sure to ask about each advantage if they aren't clear. The same works for counterplans and critique alternatives. Ask how they are going to solve for the different parts of your case and take advantage of poor answers. This applies to the negative as well. Ask them to connect the dots between the link and the impact scenarios on their disadvantages.